Hello, my name is Dan Solis, the host for Stories of Hope. We have another story of hope for you today. If you have not been able to be with us for the past Stories of Hope, I've been getting so many reports from people who said that it's been an inspiration and a help to them, especially in these times of trouble. So you can go to our archives to hear previous Stories of Hope. My guest today is Bob Zabor. Bob, happy to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Dan.
Now, Bob, you have a profession. Now, you're retired now, but what was your profession?
Well, you'd never guess, but I was a registered nurse.
Why wouldn't I guess that?
Because registered nurses, we usually take for granted they're female and pretty looking, and I'm far from being pretty.
Well, as a matter of fact, a newspaper had a write-up about you as being a male nurse back in years when we didn't expect any nurses to be male. Tell us about that.
That's correct. Well, it was in 1968, my wife and I had been getting reports from College Place down to where we lived in Riverside, California, about her father having cardiac problems. And so after much prayer and discussion, we decided to move up here with our two children and take care of her father.
Now, that's quite a jump, Riverside, California to Walla Walla College Place.
1,100 miles.
Wow.
Anyway, we got up here and naturally we had to find jobs. And I got a job at the old Walla Walla General Hospital located at Bonsella Street.
Now, that building today is no longer a hospital. It belongs to Whitman College, which is one of their residence halls.
That's correct. But at the time we got here, it was a hospital, but they were preparing to close because the new Walla Walla General was getting ready to open. But I found a job there and got hired.
So, tell us a little bit about how you came to be in Walla Walla College Place. Part of it, of course, was your father-in-law needing care, and then there were some other factors involved.
Yes. Well, let's see if I can remember what the factors were. Besides taking care of my father-in-law, a member of our family was sick too, so we figured that both of the sick people being up here in one place would allow us to take care of both of them, without having to travel and so forth.
So you left the all-day sunshine of Southern California, came up here where we have snow and ice and lots of other crazy things.
Believe it or not, Dan, my mother-in-law told me that Walla Walla was the banana belt of the Pacific Northwest.
Well,
and in 1968, we had 2 foot of snow on the flat ground. And I asked my mother-in-law, is this a frozen banana belt? But she just smiled about it, and we didn't.
Now, you had a unique experience, an unexpected experience, as you began your work at Walla Walla General Hospital.
That's correct, Dan. I was still wearing hospital whites as the nurses were back 50 years ago. And being in a brand new hospital, a relatively new nurse, I graduated only in 1965. So I was a little bit nervous and upset when we got there to the hospital. And my first day there, they showed me naturally where the emergency room was and ICU, which was 2 fields of my expertise when I worked at Riverside County Hospital in Southern California. It wasn't just a few minutes later over the loudspeaker, we got a call that a cardiac patient was arriving at Walla Walla General Hospital. Now, I was a little bit nervous about that, because I wanted the Lord to bless and let me use my knowledge and skills in helping this patient coming in. Lo and behold, it was my own father-in-law who came in with a severe heart attack.
So, you were here to care for your father, never dreaming that your first patient at the hospital
would be my father-in-law.
What happened next?
Well, he was in extreme pain, diaphoretic, and
Now, for our audience, what does that mean?
he was sweating. His
Okay.
blood pressure was low, and I knew he was in great pain by the look of anguish on his face. So I told my supervisor that I was going to run an EKG, start an IV, and give him a pain shot. She said, "I'm sorry, you can't do that. We don't have doctor's orders." And I told her, "Well, I'm sorry, but I did. I got out the EKG machine, run an EKG, found out what the problem was. I grabbed a bottle of IV fluid, the appropriate bottle, and started an IV.
Now, professionally speaking, wasn't this a risky thing to do?
Very risky. Without a doctor's orders, you're kind of practicing medicine like a physician, and that's not allowable, especially for only a 2-year nurse graduate with an AA, not a BA like I had.
So you could have been fired, you could have been disciplined.
I was told that by my supervisor.
I mean, your ability to practice could have been revoked.
That's correct. But when I told my supervisor that I wanted a key to the narcotics drawer so I could give my father-in-law a pain shot, he says, "Bob, my chest feels like there's a loaded cement truck parked on it." I said, "Look at him. I got to give him a shot, you know."
So he was coherent. He knew who you were.
That's correct. And we looked at each other, my supervisor and I, and she could see that I was really intent. So she reluctantly gave me the keys, repeating again, "We don't have doctor's orders to do this. You could lose your job." But I gave my father-in-law his pain shot, which happened to be morphine. It's a pain medication that not only relieves your pain, but it also helps your apprehension and your anxiety. I don't know what there is about it, but it was the medication of choice for him. And sure enough, within a couple of minutes, his blood pressure dropped down to almost to normal. He quit having the pain and was very calm. And all the while that my supervisor and I were talking, the hospital was trying to find my father-in-law's doctor. Believe it or not, in the next few minutes, we found him. He was fast asleep in his car in the hospital parking lot out and back. He evidently had a very tough night and a hard night and fell asleep when he came in.
Well, all father-in-law jokes aside, you must have liked your father-in-law quite a bit.
Amen. Amen. He was a stalwart hospital orderly himself. He worked at Walla Walla General for years, helping patients, giving baths, colonics, salt rubs, and things like that, you know, that an orderly could do.
Now, you worked at the hospital for a short period of time, but God had another calling on your life. What happened after your hospital experience?
Well, it was short, just a few months. And naturally, it closed up, and then they moved into the new hospital, and I moved on to the Walla Walla Veterans Hospital and worked there for almost 2 years. But I had a little problem there with working all 3 shifts. They told me at the Veterans Hospital, when you sign on, you have to work 2 shifts. Day shift or an afternoon shift or day and nights. But my supervisor was working me all 3 shifts. And I had a hard time getting sleep. And I told her, "I'm going to find another job if you don't quit that, you know." And she says, "Go ahead, you know." Just at that time, the Walla Walla Penitentiary came out with an ad that they wanted a nurse to work 5 days a week, every weekend off, and work from 7 to 3.
So
And
was this a new position at the penitentiary?
Yes.
Okay.
They were endeavoring to teach some of the inmates how to be an LPN. And so they wanted a nurse to proctor the academic teaching that they were getting when they went on the floor to take care of the patient. And I said, what nurse doesn't want a job 5 days a week with every weekend off? And the pay they were offering was much better than I was making at the VA or the old Walla Walla General. So that's when my career began at WSP as a nurse. My supervisor told me, go ahead and put in for the job, you'll never get it. She said there's going to be 50 applicants. Well, she was almost right, there were 37. But for some reason, the superintendent named Bob Ray at that time took a liking to me for some reason and hired me on the spot. So that began a 25-year-long career at WSP.
So maybe it pays to have the same name as the boss.
Yes, Bob.
So this is a totally new experience for you. You have been working in a more traditional setting with the hospital, and now you're actually not only a nurse, but you're an instructor.
That's correct in a way. And in the setting that it was at the penitentiary, I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but Walla Walla Penitentiary is a maximum security penitentiary. They have the worst of the worst from the state of Washington located at WSP. So my wife had second thoughts about me working there because it was such a dangerous environment, especially at times.
Do you recall some of the things that she said to you?
Yes, she says, don't you care about me or our children? I says, of course I do. I says, but they make much more money. We'll be able to send our kids to church school and be able to help the Lord out, especially with our tithe and offerings from there, you know. So she reluctantly allowed me to go to work at the penitentiary.
So you began a new career there, working with, as you say, the worst of the worst, or what society considers to be the worst of the worst, a maximum security prison. What was your interaction with the prisoners like?
Well, my first 3 months there were pretty, I don't know if exciting was the word to use or not, but I had at least a half a dozen physical altercations with different inmates in my first few months there at the penitentiary.
What do you mean by a physical altercation?
Well, I went into a 4-bed ward one morning with my pill tray and medicine carts and all the pills, you know, poured out for the patients. It was a 4-bed ward. 1, 2, 3, 4. I went to number 3 to give him his medication, which was supposed to be a heart patient. And he said, I want to see the doctor right now. He says, I'm having heart pain. It was 7:30 in the morning when I was making rounds. I said, he'll be in at 8 o'clock. You can see him then. He says, I want him now. A very loud voice. Well, I turned around. I said, I'm sorry, you can't see him now. And as I was heading toward the door, I heard this soft thud. I turned around just in time to see the inmate had a stainless steel urinal, which weighed about 2.5 to 3 pounds, was swinging it at my head. I was quick enough to duck just a little bit, but it did hit me in the head and my shoulder, knocked me to the floor, and I slid to the doorway in the room. Naturally, my tray and everything was all messed up, but I grabbed a hold of the door frame, pulled myself up, and he was coming at me again. Then I threw him out in the hallway, put an arm bar on him, and told him if he got off the floor, more than his chest was going to be hurting.
My. Well, Bob, this is where we're going to pick up the story when we come to our second segment. Thank you for what you shared so far.
You're welcome.
And we want to thank you for joining us. Perhaps you have a loved one, as Bob had, and his father-in-law, who's needing your care right now. Perhaps because of this virus, or maybe because they can't get the medical attention they otherwise might in a normal season of life. God was with Bob and helped him to save his father-in-law's life. God can be with you, whatever the situation, whatever the circumstances may be. God will help you through these tough times.
Amen.
And I want to invite you to join us for our second segment, which will air in the future, so that you can hear some of the even more exciting parts of Bob's story. If you have a story that you would like to share, please contact me at dansolis, DANSOLIS TV @gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today for this story of hope.